So hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Anyone that didn't hear my announcement at the beginning, I'm Sarah Bowen from the Museums and Heritage, and welcome to our autumn series, and thanks for joining us. I see someone's already on the chat. That's fantastic. Thanks for popping that in. Welcome to today's webinar, Culture on Call, Connecting Communities During the Pandemic. We've got Hampshire Cultural Trust with us today, and we're thrilled to have them involved in our autumn series, and we're thrilled to be able to bring you this completely free of charge. So what I'm going to do is just run through a little bit of housekeeping while I'm still letting people join the meeting. Any questions, please do feel free to add them to the chat function. We will collate them throughout the talk, and then we will put them to Hampshire Cultural Trust at the end of the session. Anything that we can't answer in this session or we run out of time, then what we will try and do is add an email address for you to follow up with any queries after the webinar. We're looking to run for about 30 minutes, but that might differ depending on questions and everything at the end. As I said, a recording will be made of this session, and it will be made available exactly at the same place where you found the link to join this Zoom session. It will be available just there. And I think I haven't got anyone else waiting in the waiting room, so I am just gonna hand you over to Jaane from Hampshire Cultural Trust, and she will kick things off today. Just one more thing super quickly before I hand over. Anyone that has just joined us, if you want to keep your video on, that's absolutely fine, but if you could mute, and I will apologize in advance if my doorbell rings and my dog barks, so that could happen, but I will be on mute for the most of it, so hopefully that won't interrupt anything. Right, Jaane, did you want to go ahead?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Sarah. As Sarah was saying, we are thrilled to be here, and I'm now hoping that Hannah can take over the slideshow.
I'm just making her the host now.
Well, that gives me an opportunity. I might as well get started introducing Hampshire Cultural Trust to those of you who don't know us already. Hampshire Cultural Trust manages 23 venues all across the historic county of Hampshire. So that is Hampshire and a little bit on top, which is Christchurch. And we have in that mix 17 accredited museums. So the majority of them are museums of all sizes. We have big attractions like Milestones up in Basingstoke or the City Museum in Winchester, but also smaller museums, local community museums in Gosport, Fareham, other small towns dotted around the county. On top of the museums, we have a wonderful network of flagship art galleries that show a program of touring exhibitions. We have art centers, we even have a dance academy, and we have a costume hire place. I mentioned that because when you, or if you have already seen Culture on Call, you might recognize that it is a wonderful eclectic mix representing the variety of programming that we do across the organization. We were founded in 2014, so relatively young as an organization. We are an independent charity that's taken over the collections care and the venue management of Hampshire County Council and Winchester City Council. 2019-20, so just before the pandemic, has been or was a fantastic year for us. We were very successful. We hit our targets on welcoming around 450,000 visits. We had a really busy program, some sort of big highlights like hosting the Sistine Chapel exhibition, for example, or recognizing, commemorating the anniversary of the World War in Milestones as a summer show. And so we had hit that watershed of actually as an organization equaling our earned and voluntary income to our grant funding that year. And we were in full swing when the lockdown happened, and it really hit us hard, and I'm sure it did your museums as well. So all of a sudden, we had to turn our entire program around. And while we had a lot of social media, different accounts and social media presence already in place, we really felt that there was something missing. And that's something that we put in place is Culture on Call that we want to share with you today. So Hannah, would you mind passing us on? So this is us. You can meet all of us one by one as part of this presentation. So my name is Jaane, as Sarah already said. I'm head of programming, and I'll just do a little bit more of an introduction. And then I'll pass on to Nick Seagrave, our digital transformation manager. Nick was in charge of finding the right platform and the technological and digital solutions that we needed. Then we'll pass on to Hannah, and Hannah, our communications officer, was very much at the heart of organizing the content and making it live on site as well. And finally, we'll hear from Liz, our head of marketing, about the audience that we reached through Culture on Call as well. You'll see 4 of us, but it would be very much amiss of me to think that you'll see the whole breadth of the people that are behind Culture on Call, because ultimately you can see in some of those smiley faces at the bottom our colleagues, and then again just a few of us, all of the people who contributed to Culture on Call over the last few months. And they are a lovely bunch. Thank you. How did it start? So just a little bit of a recap on the timelines. The venues closed as due to government guidance for all of us on the 18th of March. And that was obviously a hard shock. And our Culture on Call platform officially launched on the 3rd of April. So just over 2 weeks after we closed. So hopefully you can see we put all our energies behind getting this done. And it gathered pace. So if you see week 1, we had 34 posts on our platform, with kind of attracting just shy of 2,000 sessions at the time. By the time the first month was done, we've upped the ante and had 85 contributions on our site, with just under 5,000 sessions. And actually, lockdown itself was getting so busy that our peak output at that point was 12 contributions, 12 articles per week, which the guys will tell you about. Maybe we overdid it slightly. And where did we get so far? No question, lockdown was our busiest period, and we're now obviously finding out what lockdown 2 will be like. But up to that point, so from 3rd of April to 31st of October, the Culture on Call platform had received 57,000 page views, just shy of 25,000 sessions. And all the posts together, we estimate, will take you about 11.5 hours to view, to read, to listen to play with, probably more so if you do any of the activities to do with the craft activities that are kind of as part of it. So that's a brief introduction, and I'll hand over to my wonderful colleague, Nick.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, as Jaane says, we had a relatively tight turnaround or a short window of opportunity to get something up and running. And my role, very much looking after technology, digital platforms, and I mean, ultimately, Culture on Call is a website. Websites come in lots of different shapes and sizes, as many of you will probably know. So specifically, we were looking for a publishing and a blogging platform. And there are quite a lot of choices available at the moment. One of the most popular platforms is WordPress, that currently powers about 1 in 4 websites all over the world. Then there are slightly more niche platforms, things like Tumblr, Blogger, Squarespace as a self-hosted website platform, which some of you might know. And there are a few sort of emerging newer platforms with sort of privacy in mind, and one of those is called Ghost, which we'll be talking about shortly. So importantly for us, it had to be quick and easy to set up due to the amount of time that we had available to us. It had to be very simple to manage content. And I mean that very sincerely, not just us as a marketing team who are quite well versed in website content management, but because we were rolling this out to the wider team, that it had to be very simple and straightforward to pick up. And I've put there approximately £1,000 all in. I might have just plucked that out the air, but I think a lot of you will appreciate that in the sort of museums and heritage sector, there's not a huge amount of budget flying around for things like this. So we wanted to do it as cost effectively as possible with those constraints in mind. So, as I mentioned earlier, we opted for a platform called Ghost. Ghost.org is the URL. Definitely check out that site. It's got all the information you would need about that platform. I'm going to give you a few little snippets now, just to sort of whet your appetite. The fact that it's a non-profit and an open source platform is, hugely important for me personally, but also for a lot of organisations now. So I mentioned WordPress earlier. That is also an open source platform, and that really helps later on down the line when it comes to developing your site further, and all sorts of things that you can do with it. It had an immediate self-service trial available. Again, that's very important, particularly in my role. I do a lot of testing and trialing of systems. So we could basically sign up for an account straight away and start playing around just to check that it was actually as advertised. And then looking on at the sort of management side of things, they have very flexible pricing tiers. So we have ones which are very suitable for an organization of our size, but the pricing works all the way down to sort of single user, one-man band setups as well. And finally, the option to self-host. So that's relatively technical, but if you have a tech support team, or you're lucky enough to have your own web development team as part of your organization, you have the option to self-host Ghost as well, which can help you save a few precious pennies during this pandemic. So this is just a screen grab of the sort of the CMS, or the content management system. So it's quite a familiar sort of back office or back end that you might be familiar with if you've logged into a website before, but you'll notice it's very clean. You have content available in a stream on the right hand side, and then the left hand panel, there are lots of options for the management of either producing and writing content, or the actual sort of technical side of the site, which is where I spend most of my time. Now, content types or content formats, these are hugely important, particularly for modern publishing. We want as much engaging content as possible. So that means images, videos, embedding social content, and everything in between. So Ghost has some sort of off-the-shelf, purpose-built embed options. And this is an example of an image gallery on the right. I think one of the biggest perks of Ghost is that you can upload any image of any size, but it displays them very nicely in a gallery in a particular blog post for you. And as Hannah might reveal later on, we had some posts which had a lot of images in them. So this feature actually really helps save time as well as our sanity. And then finally, slightly more technical side of things, the integrations. That word can mean a lot of things. For me, as a digital transformation manager, all I'm looking for is a platform which can talk to other systems, which is not as complicated as it sounds. There you can see the happy face of the MailChimp monkey. So that is our email marketing platform. That automatically hooks up to Ghost, as do an array of other platforms as well. And that little orange icon you can see there is Zapier, which is our automation engine. Again, could go into quite a lot of detail about how that works, but it helped automate the processes for us, both internally as a team, but also from a marketing perspective as how we promote and share this information. I think that's enough from me. I'll hand you over to Hannah, who's going to talk to you about content.
Thanks, Nick. So my name's Hannah, and as Jaane said, I'm the Communications Officer at Hampshire Cultural Trust, and part of the team that put together Culture on Call back in April. So to start with, I thought we'd share a piece of content that's still one of our most popular, and that's called Silchester Objects in Focus. And this came from Claire, who is one of our conservators, and it shows some behind the scenes of our collections care. So I will just play this for you. So sorry to cut that short. We think we're running a little bit over, so I've cut that short, but if you want to see it, you can go to Culture on Call and have a look at it there. So I'm going to talk today about how we initially called for content from across the Trust, the types of and range of content that we've published, as well as the partnerships, collaborations, exhibitions, and the national days that we've created content for on Culture on Call. And I'll also touch on what we found works and what doesn't work, with some lessons learned during the process. So initially, when sourcing content, we looked to our exhibitions, and many of our exhibitions were cut short due to the first lockdown. So we were keen to find a way to allow visitors that may have missed the exhibitions to see an online version. So the first exhibition we took online was Life Through the Lens. This was an exhibition of 19th and 20th century photos local to Fareham in Hampshire. The images had previously been digitalised for the exhibition, so it made it really easy to go online with these. We also called out to the team for content and ideas, and these came flooding in. The team was so enthusiastic, and Culture on Call gave us all something to really focus on and invest our time in during a strange few months. Our volunteers were also able to contribute to our Spotlight on Volunteering section, and we had some great local history pieces from our volunteers who are all experts on their subjects. We also called to our online audience. So back in April, we introduced a project on Culture on Call called Lockdown Open Up. This was set up to engage with our audiences and ask them how they were feeling in the extraordinary times that we are living in. They were able to respond in any way they wanted, a sentence, a poem, a piece of artwork, a photograph, and we were publishing the responses as they came in. Since going back into lockdown at the start of November, we've relaunched the project known as Lockdown Open Up Again, and we hope to capture the mood of the time through our visitor responses. So there's been a huge range of types of content that we've published on Culture on Call. Some, as you can imagine, have worked better than others. And I have listed a few here. All our content has at least one tag attached to it. This tag effectively categorizes the post and drops it into the categories in the Discover page, which is a little snippet of what you can see here. This makes it easy for our audience to find content that they're interested in. Initially, we began tagging our content by venues. However, it quickly became clear that in order to present a trust-wide online offer that was not geographically restricted, we needed to focus the tags on the content itself and not where it came from. So there's a few examples below. A large part of our physical programme is exhibitions, so it made sense that this would reflect onto Culture on Call. So as I said, we used the current physical programme initially as our starting point. And as the blog started to develop, we began to look at previous exhibitions that have been hosted across our venues in the past and found ways to present these on the digital platform. Luckily, we have a huge archive of photographs and information on our past exhibitions, which could be utilised for this purpose. So in July, when our venues began to reopen, we decided to use the blog as a way of creating interest for upcoming physical exhibitions. So we commissioned works with paper artist Andy Singleton for a physical exhibition in Winchester, and in the lead up to this, Andy documented his time creating the works in a series of blog posts for Culture on Call. While the galleries were still closed, our physical programme was obviously disrupted, so we decided to take an exhibition that was upcoming in the physical programme and move it online, and this leads us on to our partnership work. So our first partnership was with Winchester Photographic Society. This is a local group that have an annual exhibition in our City Space gallery in the Winchester Discovery Centre. Understandably, they were nervous about setting their entire exhibition online, and as were we. It was a huge job, which involved over 200 works, multiple categories, an e-commerce site and a public vote. But for our first partnership, it was a great success. Since then, we've created content with multiple partners, including Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, Wessex Archaeology, and Heritage Open Days, to name a few. Okay, as a Heritage Trust, it was important that we were engaging with local and national history. We also thought it was important to create content that parents could use whilst they were home educating their children. So we tailored our content to coincide with national days, events, and school holidays. VE Day 75 is an example of this. It was such an important event, so we made sure that this was showcased on Culture on Call. We published 24 items over the VE Day weekend, and this included articles, exhibitions, a video of some of our Gosport residents discussing their memories of VE Day, and a VE Day street party gallery, which you can see here. So in the 7 months that Culture on Call has been live, we've published a huge amount of posts with a variety of content in different mediums. And although we're still evaluating what works and what doesn't, we have picked up on a few things so far. So it's unsurprising that video content works well. This is the most accessible medium and is often the type of content that receives the most views. The topics of our videos often have a behind the scenes feel to them, which seems to increase the most interest. We've also found that our partnership work has been successful as it draws in a different audience through a different route. And during the summer lockdown, we were publishing, as Nick said, a huge amount of content to Culture on Call. And it's our understanding that as a result of this, our audiences were missing some of the content. So since picking up on this, we've reduced our quantity of publication, which allows time for the content to reach our audiences. Initially, we were seeing little engagement with certain types of content, so serialized articles and downloadable activities. However, what we're now finding is that where we publish a reduced amount of articles, there's been a slight increase of engagement with these types of content. So in a moment, I'm going to pass you over to Liz Leask, our Head of Marketing and Communications. But first, I'd just like to show you a further piece of content from our venues team that is not only a favourite within the Trust, but has proved to be one of our most popular pieces on Culture on Call. So we joined David, the Operations Manager at our Milestones Museum in Basingstoke, for the first part in Mannequins of Milestones series.
Hello everyone, my name is David. I'm the Operations Manager for Milestones Museum. As you might expect, the museum is currently closed to members of the public, but I'm still here once a week just to make sure that everything's working the way it should, so that when we're all able to leave our homes, we can welcome back our wonderful visitors as quickly as possible. On a normal day, Milestones can welcome 1,000 or more visitors through its doors. But at the moment, I'm stuck sharing the building with this lot. Some people think mannequins can be a little creepy, but after spending quite a bit of time in the building on my own with them, I can confirm that, yes, they definitely are creepy, especially this little guy. Instead of spending my day at the museum talking to the mannequins, which I definitely do not do, I thought I'd take the opportunity to introduce some of them to you at home. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a little history along the way. So welcome to the first episode of Mannequins of Milestones. If you're familiar with the museum, you'll know there really is only one mannequin we can kick things off with. If you know what I'm talking about and you're watching with someone else, don't ruin the surprise. This building here is our Edwardian cottage, and it's home to one of the most infamous parts of our exhibition. Looking through the back door, we can see all kinds of objects from our collection, laid out as they might have been in a home around the start of the 20th century. Just imagine living through lockdown back then. No video calls, no Xbox Live, no Netflix. Nightmare! What we're here to see isn't in the cottage itself, but in the outbuildings. This door behind me is the coal shed. With no electricity and no domestic gas supply, most Edwardians were reliant on fuels such as coal and wood to keep themselves warm and to cook with. And if we just open up the door next to it, we'll see, oh my goodness! Beg your pardon? Yes, here is our aptly named man on toilet. The majority of homes in the early 20th century had no mains drainage. You couldn't simply flush away your toilet waste, so it was preferable to situate your privy outside, because of the smell. Once you'd done your business, you had to figure out a way to get rid of the stuff. Some outdoor privies drained to a compost heap, nothing like fresh feces to make your veggies grow big and tall. You could pay someone called a night soil man to come and take the toilet rubbish away. Let's not think too hard about that job. Or, my personal favourite, poop in a bucket. But wait, it gets worse. Edwardians didn't have the luxury of toilet paper, so they would have to wipe their bums with ripped up pieces of newspaper. Some of you might have found out what that feels like during recent shop shortages, and I'm sure you are all very pleased to get back to your super soft, triple ply, double velvet bog roll. Still, some things never change. As you can see from our mannequin here, toilet literature remains as popular today as it was back then. If you're anything like me, you'll enjoy reading a book or a paper, or maybe checking your phone while you're on the loo. We just don't have to wipe our bums with those things anymore. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed meeting one of our mannequins and finding out a little more about times gone by. Hopefully we'll be able to welcome you back to milestones soon, but in the meantime, hello everyone.
So thanks for that. Thanks to David for doing that, and I'll pass you over to Liz now.
That's great, thanks Hannah, and that is one of my favourite videos that we've got on Culture on Call. I know that David actually has never lived down the cringy sign off, but you know, he's going to have to top that one for the next video he makes, I think. So hi everybody, so my name's Liz, I'm Head of Marketing Communications at Hampshire Cultural Trust, and what I'm going to be talking about for the next few minutes is engagement, who we engage with, how we engage with them, and then just to top it off, just to talk a little bit about what we see as the future for Culture on Call. So as you can see from this slide, for me and for most of us, it's all about the audience. So the Trust as a whole has a really broad audience appeal. We appeal to anyone from culture buffs looking for a high quality cultural experience in the local area, to communities preserving their local heritage, to families, grandparents who want to take their kids on a great day out. But to start with, I'm just going to take a look at a comparison between our audiences on Culture on Call, our audiences on our website, and the audience that we actually have in our venue. So first off, how old are they? So as you can see from this slide, by far the largest demographic in our venues, which is the big grey bar, is 65 plus, while the 18 to 34 age group accounts for just 17% of our actual physical visitors, which is really underrepresentative of benchmark population within Hampshire particularly. Conversely, the 18 to 34 group accounts for 31% of our Culture on Call visitors and 36% of our website visits. So what we can take this, and we all know it, is that attracting a younger audience is a real challenge for us as a trust, but also for many heritage organisations. And while we're not there yet, we do see the creativity and diversity of what Culture on Call has to offer as a really key growth area for us, in a way that we can capture this younger audience, converting online engagement into a future pipeline of visitors and supporters. So looking next at how I identify, and I must apologise in advance, we don't have enough sophistication within our methods to do anything more complex than female and male. But what we do see here is actually there is quite a stark difference between our in-venue visitors, where we have 60% female, which kind of reflects the trend with the museums and heritage as a whole, versus our website, which is also about 60%. So females tend to be dominant on websites because they do tend to be still the key bookers of organising visits and days out, etc. Culture on Call, though, is really intriguing because actually it's been slightly reversed, in that we have a marginally higher male versus female readership. So what this does present us with is an opportunity to engage our male audience more with our activity, and also we can use that to link them in with the audience preferences we use in other areas of our comm strategy, such as our email marketing. Next, where do they come from? Well, here we go. This is like the top, I think it's actually top 12, which is quite an unusual number, of visitors to Culture on Call on our website. Being Hampshire and Dorset based, geographically we attract a largely local audience with a significant number of day trippers, and our marketing is broadly targeted at people within a maximum 90-minute drive of any given venue. In fact, 57% of our visitors come from within a 30-minute drive and 77% live in the southeast. To date, Cultural Call has geographically largely mirrored this physical reach with all the major towns and cities within Hampshire, Dorset, Berkshire, etc. that we would expect to see in our venues. Having said that, Cultural Call does actually have a wider spread on our website and also a broader national reach, with our content going further afield to places such as Bristol, Cardiff, Oxford and Birmingham, who all appear in the top 25 locations. So moving to the next slide, it's actually really useful looking at how we do with overseas engagement as well. So again, as you'd expect, 93% of our in-venue visitors come from the UK, with 7% largely driven by our sort of the key tourist destination within our portfolio, which is Winchester. Interestingly, when we get to Culture on Call, we actually now have a 20% overseas visitorship, showing that the content-driven approach is actually extending our reach and raising our online profile. And we've had visitors from Amsterdam, Helsinki, Beijing, and actually I was in email conversation with a gentleman last week from Germany who was rather taken with a post we had for Halloween on the identification of animal skulls. So, from a marketing perspective, this is one I get really interested in, is how we've engaged them. So how have we actually got them to engage with Culture on Call, being a completely brand new platform, launching at a time when everybody's in lockdown and everybody's getting things online. So we used some of the key tools that we have at our disposal. E-shots. So we already have an established email platform that we use. Nick mentioned earlier, we use MailChimp to send out all of our e-shots. So once we'd launched Culture on Call, we sent out a weekly newsletter every week to all of our full subscriber database, and that actually took over all of the previous emails that we were sending separately to different preference areas. We found that had a really high engagement rate, over 32% on average, with a 6% CTR, which are both well above the sector averages. Our website, we're lucky to have a really well-established website where we have a really high volume of visitors. So what we did with that to direct traffic to Culture on Call was to make sure that the whole of the homepage was completely blanketed with Culture on Call and links directing visitors to the website straight to the blog instead. Organic social media, I think as Nick again mentioned, the platform that we chose, Ghost, does have the ability to feed out the posts on. They go directly to our social media scheduling tool, Buffer. What we did find there, which Hannah also touched on, was because of the volume of posts that we had, we were actually saturating our own social media. So we did have to go in and manually amend all of our schedules, particularly for time-sensitive posts, because we found that they were actually lagging behind within the schedule. Social media pay for. Now, this actually was tactically one of the best things that we had to promote specific content within Culture on Call. I mean, we made sure that we chose and are still choosing those posts we really, really want people to see. So one really excellent example is that for Heritage Open Days this year, we produced 3 films in-house regarding 3 aspects of our collections, one of which was called Bumping Heads, which is about phrenology, and one was about guns, and one was about the changes in technology. And what we did for those 3 posts, with a very, very modest investment of £150 for paid for Facebook advertising, within 1 week, we actually achieved 38,000 impressions and 25,000 reach. So that's absolutely been one of our most successful means of reaching people with the content that we're publishing. Press and media. So very weird press and media world during lockdown, but one of the things we did pretty immediately as soon as Culture on Call had been launched was to pump out a press release. We were very fortunate that that was actually picked up by both of our regional TV stations, the major ones, BBC South and ITV Meridian, which was fantastic. So we were able to have a nice good screenshot of Life Through the Lens, which Hannah mentioned earlier, on BBC South, which was fantastic. And we found that it was really picked up as a positive news story by all of our local key media. In fact, we had a reach of 1.5 million and AV of 35,000 for just that one press release. So in the end, the top referrals that we had from the activity that we undertook to promote Culture on Call came from Facebook, from our own emails, and also from the Trust website. So moving on to what they're engaged with, I won't go into this in too much detail because Hannah has already mentioned most of these. Partner working, absolutely, that's proved to be incredibly popular. Promoted content, well, let's face it, if that wasn't engaged with, then we were doing something wrong marketing-wise. Film, unsurprisingly, people like film. Pre-existing audience engagement, this is a rather long term, but I couldn't think of anything better. Fundamentally, what this boils down to is during lockdown, we were lucky to be able to take a series of workshops with the Hampshire Poet. These are called Poetry for Wellbeing courses. And what we found that once those courses are complete, we actually were able to take the content generated by participants in forms of poems, and the Hampshire Poet recorded these, and we posted them in a series on Culture on Call. And we found that because of that, we had the course participants were obviously referring their own contacts, family and friends to Culture on Call, and also sharing themselves on their own social channels. So from that, we found that we were getting a lot of engagement with that particular area of content. Unlisted paid for content is something, this is something we haven't talked about yet, is how I've used Culture on Call as a platform to host paid for content, which have run particularly in our art centres in the form of online classes and workshops. So what we've done is use Culture on Call as a place to host links where customers who've paid for example, an art class, go to pick up that link, and they can then see their class that they paid for. What they haven't engaged with, again, Hannah has already in touch with this on the downloadable content, multiple reasons. What we found is a lot of our users have actually, they've been viewing Culture on Call on either a mobile or tablet. Downloadable content, we mean it's printable, so obviously there is not a facility for people actually to print things out. It's quite old school. Serialised articles, again, I think the reason for that is to start off with, we published serialised articles quite early on in the life of Culture on Call, and at that point it didn't really have an established repeat visitor profile. So, you know, that's something we'll definitely try again. And features aimed at a younger audience, particularly when I say younger, looking at under 10s. And I think a lot of that, there is a lot of competition in terms of already established go-to sites like CBeebies, for example. And also, you know, even kids as young as 2, 3 are very used to swiping things on tablets. And that, at the moment, is a facility that we don't have with Culture on Call. So, moving on, what's happening now? Well, what we found is obviously first time around, as we alluded to earlier, we had to move really, really quickly to get something online so that we could keep connecting with communities through the programme that we're offering. Lockdown 2, it's all there already. We've got it, it's sorted, it's done. Immediately, everybody across the Trust who's collaborated to get articles published has come in with new materials so that we can make sure we've got a really steady stream of content going out. We have an online art exhibition going out this weekend, showcasing 165 art submissions from different artists through our art centres. We also have, well, we're very lucky to take the first tour of the Sunday Times watercolour exhibition this year. Unfortunately, it won't be able to see physically during the lockdown, but we have got a 360-degree tour of that coming up next week, I believe, hopefully. And Nick has moved really quickly to actually get an e-commerce platform sorted this week, so we will actually be able to sell those, the paintings from the Sunday Times watercolour online as well. So as I said, we've been in a great position with lockdown 2, that we're all there ready to go, and hopefully we won't have any more, but should we, it will be there again for us. So managing our content and looking at the future, you know, to start off with, everything was submitted. We asked for call out content from everybody across the Trust to make sure that we had things to publish. So we've taken the lessons from our early publishing to inform what we're going to do in the future, and we're actually going to put together, and are in the process of doing so, very close to finalising an editorial calendar for a whole year, so that we know as far as we possibly can in advance what we're going to publish month by month and week by week. And there'll be 5 key strands to that content. Firstly, we've got to be complementary to what we're actually doing in venue once lockdown is over, etc. So we'll be doing things like profile pieces of artists, we'll be looking at artist methods, we'll be doing behind the scenes, we'll be doing installation pieces. So it's all about complementing what we're actually doing in our venues. Calendar events, as Hannah's already said, we did a really big and successful feature for VE Day this year, VE Day 75. But part of our editorial calendar is actually looking at what's happening on a national level and, if relevant, on an international level, and seeing what within those events is going to be relevant for us and what content we can produce. For example, on November the 19th, it does happen to be World Toilet Day, and I'm sure our lovely mannequin from Milestones may be making an appearance at some point to celebrate that very important day. Partner working with selected partners that we already work with within the trust. That obviously produces fantastic content. It strengthens our working relationships with them, and in turn it benefits us in terms of the audiences that it brings to us. Regular features, things that we'd like to do are things regular Q&A with our fantastic volunteers, over 400 of them who contribute so much to the organisation. And also things like during lockdown, we run a programme in one of our venues in Christchurch, which is working with people with dementia and their carers. And during lockdown, to make sure that we could still reach out to them, we published a series of activity packs called Still Curious. And it's things like that, regular features that we know people want to come back, want to revisit and want to see again. And then, of course, there's always going to be organic stories that we can't allow for, such as acquisitions, interviews, etc., which will come in. So, thankfully, I'm coming to the end. You won't have to listen to me anymore. But the future, I mean, there is so much that we can still do with it. I think there are so many exciting opportunities. Some are resource bound, some are just kind of, hey, what can we do? Interactive content. A challenge for Nick, what can we do in terms of getting stuff out there which is more interactive for children? Podcasts, we haven't done any podcasts as yet. That's certainly one area I would like to investigate. Live Q&A sessions, we hosted one with the Festival of Archaeology earlier this year, but that's something we'd like to do ourselves. A membership area, I mean, is this something we can explore in terms of making an exclusive membership area where we have exclusive content? QR codes are king at the moment, getting QR codes out there, so visitors to our venues just get that QR code on their phone and go straight to Culture on Call to read content. And who knows, maybe even if we get big enough, actually selling space so we can actually generate some income. These are all things to look at in the future. So that's me finished, and I think that's the end of what we wanted to present from us here at Hampshire Cultural Trust as well. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask to any of us?
I actually have picked up a couple from the chat. Thank you for
Sarah.
that. Was really great. It was great to see where you started and where you've ended up. And I think it's brilliant that, as you said, with lockdown number 2 happening, you're hitting the ground running because
absolutely.
Place. A couple of questions. Ghost is the platform you use. Did you say it was free, completely free?
Not exactly. It can be completely free, but in order for that, you need to have your own server and your own development team.
Right.
So in theory, it could be free. I think their lowest pricing tier is about $9 a month. So it's very affordable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said it was very easy to use. Now, do you need web editing knowledge, or is it very easy to use for a layperson who has no experience of it?
Well, maybe Hannah can answer that question, as she spends most of her time in there.
It is really straightforward. There's not a lot of formatting options, which is, could seem sort of a negative thing, but actually it's really straightforward. It gives you how to format everything just is automatic. So it's on there straight away. Everything you want to add in, YouTube videos, images, galleries, it's all really straightforward to do. So yeah, definitely user friendly.
And you can just embed all your content. Do you host your content, video content, especially on YouTube, and then just embed it through to your Ghost platform?
Yeah. So YouTube or Vimeo as well, we can use on there.
Okay, that's really helpful. The video content that you said, there were a few comments in the video, one in particular about how the conservation video was filmed, and I know that it was posted that anyone that has any questions about how that conservation video was filmed with the iPhone, you can email them directly at collections@hampshireculturaltrust.org.uk. Do I have that right, Jaane? Was that? Yeah,
that would be perfect. I think the ins and outs of how Claire managed to get her iPhone to just be right, I think we'll ask Claire to answer that.
Okay. But there were a lot of comments saying how it was a really lovely video. And obviously the video of David was incredible too. Do you find that the personable videos like the David video are your most engaged with?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think, we were talking earlier about sort of seeing inside people's homes, weren't we, when we first joined the call, and how it makes things more human. And I think certainly having that human element absolutely makes things more engaging, and people such as David being able to show their personalities as well. I think, yes, definitely appeals to our audiences.
Excellent. And you said that you do your video content in-house. Is that a big production? Do you do it quite lo-fi?
It's all, I just trying to think. I don't think, I mean, apart from possibly a couple of external videos, everything has been done on people's phones.
Okay, so a very, very simple.
Yeah, it's very simple. I think, I mean, Nick or Hannah, do correct me, but I think that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit more authentic as well when it comes directly from sort of somebody's phone in venue.
Absolutely. And I think during this time, we've all lowered our expectations, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, saying that it's very simple content, but that's all we really want in this time. And I think, you know, we don't need big productions, we don't need lights, camera, action, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a really nice way to engage. Now, a couple of questions that have just come in. What were your objectives when you got started?
That's an interesting question. I think we probably, if you could ask all four of us, we'll have 4 different answers to that. So I'll start us off. I think from a programming point of view, it was to fill that gap that we felt was between our planned output and our program and how we wanted to engage with people, and the social media aspect that was already there, which is very short intention span oriented and kind of, you know, really snappy and little bits and bobs. What was missing was an opportunity to just give some real content out there, and that I think is where Culture and Call, from a programming point of view, really kind of, you know, pulled it off for us.
Absolutely. No, as I say, I think having a blog is something that we had kind of said, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have one day, wouldn't it? And I think actually what it's made us do, you know, is by necessity we now have it. And I absolutely echo what Jaane said, is to me was a complete missing link in how we're communicating with our audiences. So yeah, as a marketeer, for you know, to get that platform where we could showcase far more of what we actually do, rather than the website, which is a fantastic platform for showing transactional events, for want of a better word. So that's what Culture on Call gives us.
Yeah,
also,
I definitely think. Oh, sorry,
sorry, Hannah.
No, sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say, one thing that we haven't mentioned is, obviously, as a charity, it was very important for us still to maintain the fact we are a charity, we need to fundraise, and that's connecting culture through communities was also the message we were getting out on all of our channels, in terms of keeping that fundraising and charity message at the forefront as well.
There's one more thing that I think we should probably mention, and that is that it kept all of us busy and it kept all of us sane as well.
Yeah.
we obviously, you can see from what we put out there was an awful lot of consideration about who's the audience and what do they need and what might they enjoy us doing. But I remember, especially in the early times, it was the bit that kept us doing the job that we wanted to do and kept us feeling like we were making a contribution at a very difficult time. And I think that was really precious too.
Yeah, I definitely think it kept us relevant to our communities as well. It kept us sort of in touch with them when they couldn't physically visit our venues. There was still an offer there, so it meant that we never left them throughout lockdown, even though they couldn't physically visit our spaces.
Yeah, of course, and that was invaluable, I bet, to a lot of your audience. One more question that's come in. Does it take a long time to manage the responses from the public when you ask them for content?
So in terms of lockdown open up, I'm guessing.
I'm assuming so, yeah, asking them to contribute to it.
So we had it open throughout the whole of lockdown. So it was just a case of we put the call out, we put it on our social a couple of times as well. And it was just a case of when the content came in, we'd have a look and we'd publish it sort of as quickly as possible, so that thought was very much in the moment, and we were updating it, I think daily at one point. I was going in and making sure it was up to date. So I think in terms of managing it, we had a few responses. Well, I think, I'm not quite sure exactly on the number of responses we had, but we had enough that it was definitely a sort of changing feeling that was going through. So hopefully we'll have the same sort of thing this time round.
Great. There was a question earlier. Nick, you actually answered it, but in case anyone isn't keeping their eye on the chat, sorry guys, by the way, I do realise that we're running over. This is all being recorded, so if you do have to disappear, but there are a few more questions that I'd like to get through while we've got the team here. Sorry, Nick, going back to the question that you answered in the chat, but in case anyone didn't pick it up, how do you capture the demographic data for online users?
Yeah, so this is an interesting and quite topical area, I think, of data collection at the moment, very much privacy focused and oriented. In short, if you use Google Analytics on your website or your app, then there is an extra setting which enables you to collect demographic data. When you enable that, however, it does prompt you to review your privacy policy. And as a relatively big organisation, that's obviously quite important that we get right. And interestingly, we've since switched from Google Analytics to a very GDPR compliant analytical application called Fathom. And that's very much been in response to the need to be serving people cookie notices. That's something we didn't want to do on Culture On Call. So yeah, we started with Google Analytics and we now have Fathom.
Great. One more question, and you did touch on this, Liz, but the opportunity to monetize the digital content, that is one of your future aims for Culture On Call, I believe.
Yeah, not necessarily an aim. It's a kind of, it's something that we could do. I mean, it's not, we haven't monetized anything that we've done digitally at all so far as a trust, but you know, that's certainly, if it becomes big enough and appealing enough to advertisers, yeah, why not? It's a thought that we can have and something that we can develop and see if we actually want to do that.
Great. And are you working in partnership with schools to create sort of workbooks, engagement tools for kids of that sort of age? I know that we were looking at your demographics for 18 to 24.
We haven't actually. No, we do have a big schools program, particularly at Milestones, and that's something that we've not formally looked at yet. But certainly something that we can talk to our schools colleagues about within the trust. But no, as yet, nothing formal. We did target the homeschooling market while we were in lockdown, try and give those poor parents some relief with some activities and things to look at.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think that's covered most of the questions. Are you guys, sorry to put you on the spot, are you guys happy to share your slides so that I can let everyone know that they'll be made available on site? If you want to make some edits, that's absolutely fine. And then any other questions? I've popped my email address. In fact, I'll just pop this up now so that you can see my screen. And then you've got an email address that you can contact. Bear with me, guys. Sorry, technology. Always wonderful until you have to make it work. Can everyone see that email address at the end, sarah@museumsandheritage.com, if you've got any questions about the content? One question we did get asked, though, and I think it would be remiss of us to not answer it before we leave, is the man on the loo new? Someone on the call visited 2 years ago and they don't remember seeing him.
He's not. I don't know how long he's been there, but I think it's time he actually had
a way to find him, don't you? That's the hard bit. That's the kind of the part of the challenge.
A personal highlight for me, of course, was that video. It was very good. Okay, well, I think I'm going to close that up unless anyone has anything else that they would like to put to the team. Thank you so much, Hampshire Cultural Trust, for taking the time to join us today and share that. It it does look like an excellent programme and a real way for you to stay engaged with your communities through what is a challenging time for everybody. Thanks for joining us today. The recording will be up on the website. I've also included my email address there, so if you do want the recording sent straight to you, just email me directly. And we're bringing you lots more content for the autumn series, so do check back. We'll be loading new videos throughout November and December. Thanks everybody, and take care, and I hope we'll see you here again soon.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.